joining us tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I am your host for another fabulous little half hour where we are going to talk all things motorsports, because there was no shortage of action this past weekend. We had Formula One out in Barcelona. We had NASCAR in Pocono. We also had the 24 hours of Le Mans, which proved to be quite the thrilling spectacle to watch. Of course, the winner wasn't necessarily that surprising, but still, I think we had a very good event over there in Le Mans. Once again, it's always one of my favorite events of the racing season, and we've got even more cool things coming up this weekend. We've got NASCAR making its first trip to the Coronado Naval Base in San Diego for a street race around that naval base. That's going to be a really cool sight to behold. And then, of course, IndyCar is in action at America's greatest racetrack. That's Road America. Looking forward to that. Got a couple of more races coming up overall across the world, and we'll talk about those later on coming up here in the show. But for now, let's go ahead and jump right on into the news of the week. There's plenty to discuss, and especially in the world of Formula One, because as we've talked about last week, we talked about Alpine and their request for review with the FIA regarding Pierre Gasly's penalty. Well, we have an update on that. Alpine has succeeded in its request for the FIA to review the penalties handed down to Pierre Gasly after the Monaco Grand Prix, with F1 acknowledging that the distance used in calculating pit lane speed was indeed inaccurate. Now, this has restored Gasly's third place finish, putting him on the podium. Of course, it's not exactly the best bandage to put over it, because he wasn't actually able to stand on the podium at Monaco, which is kind of half of the whole thing. But he did get that place reinstated to him. But after that, McLaren then lodged an appeal regarding the updated race results, saying in a statement that they, quote, believe this case raises important questions concerning sporting fairness, regulatory consistency, and the integrity of competition. They further went on to say that, quote, in our view, the subsequent removal of penalties creates a situation in which some of our competitors are disadvantaged by having acted in accordance with the rules and the steward's decisions. Such an outcome risks creating sporting inequity and undermining confidence in the consistent application of the FIA sporting regulations. So that is McLaren's reaction to that. They're definitely not exclusive to that. There's lots of other teams across the paddock that kind of feel surprised by this move, but we'll have to see now what ends up coming from this, whether or not Gasly actually keeps his third place, or whether or not the FIA upholds their decision here after the Alpine appeal. Again, lots of moving parts here. Hopefully we'll get an update here in the coming weeks about what exactly the FIA is going to do regarding this whole situation. More in the world of Formula One, and this is pretty interesting, but not all that surprising. Fernando Alonso told the media over the weekend that he likely made his final race ever at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that retirement is imminent. Now, we know that Alonso, the end is near on his Formula One career, but he's not looking to retire at the end of 2026. Likely, it is heavily rumored and speculated that Alonso would retire at the end of 2027. So in him saying this is not necessarily major news, more so than him saying, hey, this is the last time I'm going to be here at what has been essentially his home Grand Prix for his entire career, and making his final start, because he knows that next year the track is not going to be on the calendar. So this is not necessarily Alonso saying, I'm done. This is Alonso kind of relishing in the fact that this was the last time he'll ever race at what has, like I said, been his home Grand Prix for his entire career. Of course, he does have at least two more races in his home country of Spain coming up later on this year at the Madrid, and then again next year at the Madrid. So Madrid, I'll figure it out when F1 gets there. You know how I call it, what I call it, though. Moving on into the next piece of news. This was pretty good. Reigning Formula 2 champion Leonardo Fornaroli has tested for Haas in an F1 car this weekend at Jerez. So that happened this week. Just reporting on it, so good to see Fornaroli getting that Formula 1 test. Of course, he's still slated also to have an IndyCar test as well, so we'll see where he ends up. He's looking for a ride somewhere. He's the reigning F2 champion. I think he's worthy of a ride, and he's looking for something out there, so we'll see what he lands coming up. Now an update to something we've been talking about for the last several months here. Of course, Felipe Massa, Crashgate, lawsuit, scandal, all of that. Well, here's the update that we got this week. Bernie Ecclestone, FOM, Formula One Management, and the FIA have been granted permission to appeal the decision that was laid down last year in Felipe Massa's conspiracy trial. Now, again, last year, a hearing at London's High Court allowed the claim for damages based on unlawful means of conspiracy to proceed. However, so just because Massa's case is going to proceed, the Supreme Court has now allowed the defendants permission to appeal, which of course they have. So that is the latest update on this. Of course, that trial is going ahead, but an appeal has now been granted for the defendants. Like I said, Bernie Ecclestone, FOM, FIA, to appeal this ruling about the trial going forward. So we'll have to see where that goes coming up, hopefully later in the next couple of weeks, maybe months. But again, we'll keep you updated right here on the Racing Report as soon as we learn more. Final piece of Formula One news for this week is that Pirelli has signed on to remain the official F1 tire supplier through the 2028 season. So that is a nice little contract extension for Pirelli, which has served as the official tire supplier for Formula One since 2011. Now let's move on into the world of IndyCar. Not a ton to discuss, but still some big developments that have gone on. And first and foremost, we kind of talk about this. This was kind of an interesting thing to read on Racer. Racer is reporting that delegates, I should say, from the Colombian city of Barranquilla visited the Indianapolis 500 in May to meet with CEO Mark Myles regarding a possible IndyCar street race in the country. Now, Myles has confirmed the reports to Racer, adding that the proposal appears, quote, well-funded, but it does not have a confirmed site for the street course. Looks like, I believe Myles said something about they've got a couple of concepts here and there about where they could race, but nothing's set in stone yet. Of course, the idea there would be that they would hopefully hold a race by 2027, but it seemed like Myles was pumping the brakes on that, saying, hey, this is going to be a bit of a long haul, probably not going to be feasible here for 27, but we could possibly look at something for 28. So maybe we could see an IndyCar race in Colombia, which would be a big deal considering the fact that there's a rich history of Colombians who have raced in IndyCar in the past. Of course, Juan Pablo Montoya being one of the most famous. Carlos Munoz is also there. Of course, you know, there's lots of others. Tatiana Calderon, she ran a few IndyCar races a couple of years ago. She's from Colombia. I believe even, maybe I don't want to say something wrong. I know at the very least those three are Colombians. But of course, that would be a big deal for the country to have an IndyCar street race there. Moving along into more IndyCar news, and this is kind of a relatively big deal. IndyCar is reducing the hybrid power output for the remainder of the season beginning this weekend at Road America. IndyCar's technical team will now make a race-by-race decision to determine how much hybrid horsepower to reduce, and it could be anywhere between 10 to 25%. Now, this is being done with the hope to fix the increase in hybrid reliability problems they've been having, hopefully maybe reducing some of that horsepower from the hybrid power output helps that. Ultimately, we'll just have to see. It's going to be interesting to see what that does this weekend at Road America. Maybe we see less hybrid failures, less drivers frustrated with the hybrid, but ultimately that's going to be a very interesting thing to see play out. Of course, especially we've got a new engine and new chassis coming in 2028. I would imagine that hybrid will be back to full power by that point, but again, anything can change. Final piece of IndyCar news here before we take our first break of the show. After going from last to first a couple of weeks ago at Gateway, Myles Rowe is reportedly under consideration by Team Penske to participate in this season's end-of-the-year test. So potentially we could see Myles Rowe getting to run an actual full-size IndyCar. Maybe we see him run Indianapolis 500 in the future? Who knows? Again, speculation on my part from that, but definitely credible sources are reporting that Myles Rowe is likely to have a test with Team Penske at the end of the IndyCar season. That is it for the first half of the news for this week, but we're going to go ahead here quick and take our second break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to break down some big news in the world of supercars, as well as some more minor news, but also a big silly season domino falling in the world of NASCAR. More Racing Report coming up after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. As always, appreciate you guys sticking with us through that break. And now let's go ahead and get into our second portion of this week's news, beginning in the world of supercars. Remember, there is a race this weekend at Darwin. We'll talk about that here coming up later on in the show. But after last week's news that we discussed about Grove Racing blocking Matt Payne's potential NASCAR Cup Series debut at Sonoma, we have now learned that Payne himself says he is not intending to leave Grove Racing until his contract is up at the end of 2027. However, there's been some serious speculation that the way that he worded this statement leaves open the idea that he could potentially still go to a Chevrolet team, likely Team 18, in 2028 after the expiration of his current Grove Racing contract. So that is something to keep in mind because, again, Chevrolet is very high on Matt Payne. They want him behind the wheel of one of their race cars, but Payne is seemingly putting to bed any idea that he would leave his Grove Racing contract early to go race for a Chevrolet team. Again, likely would be Team 18. But again, this is still about 2 years down the road, so we'll have to see what Matt Payne decides when his contract starts to get to the end at Grove Racing coming up next year. Next piece of news, again, we're going to Darwin Hidden Valley Raceway this weekend, and we got some pretty big news there about the future of that event. Supercars has announced that next year's opening race, so that'll be the Friday race at Hidden Valley Raceway, will be held at night under the lights. This is a big deal. Now, because the track previously attempted to run a race under the lights in 2016, but ultimately that plan did not come to fruition, but details regarding the required lighting infrastructure for this upcoming night race coming up next year have not yet been released. So, of course, when we know that, we'll be sure to let you know. But that is a big development. It'll be kind of cool to see what these supercars look like under the lights in the Northern Territory. Finally, and this, if you're a NASCAR fan, IndyCar fan, if you're really a fan of North American sports, this is a little bit nerve-wracking. You're a little bit nervous about hearing this news. But Supercars announced this week that they will produce this weekend's races in Darwin for television entirely remotely from their offices in Sydney. Now, however, commentators and pit reporters are still travel to the race weekends, but they are saying this is going to be the next level. This is the next best way to broadcast supercars, so they say. I'm skeptical, but we'll see what happens after this weekend's races. Maybe they're produced well. Maybe there's something left to be desired. We know what it's like when races here in North America are produced and broadcasted remotely, and it's not usually been the best experience. But hey, anything is possible. Perhaps the Supercars guys and girls will maybe they fix it. Maybe they do it well. Who knows? We'll have to find out coming up this weekend in Darwin. But that is it for Supercars news. Let's go ahead now and transfer into the world of NASCAR, because not a lot, like I said, but we did have one major silly season domino falling that we should discuss. Now, last week we told you that Josh Berry had announced on his own terms that he was not returning to the Wood brothers for next year. Well, now we've learned this week that the Wood brothers will sign Jesse Love to replace him for next season. Love will run full-time in that 21 Ford, so that is going to be a big deal for him because he's going to be running for Rookie of the Year, of course, alongside Corey Heim, who is also stepping up to the Cup Series next year. So I'll be very curious to see what that Rookie of the Year battle is going to look like. But still not sure where Josh Berry is going to land, but at the very least, we know who's going to take over the number 21 Cup car beginning in 2027. Also, in the world of contracts, extensions, some silly season news, whatnot, Chris Buescher has signed a multi-year contract extension with RFK Racing to keep him behind the wheel of the number 17 Ford for the foreseeable future. Details of that contract have not been released, so we don't know how long this contract is for, but we do know that RFK Racing locking up Chris Buescher early. That's good for them. That's a good get because he is definitely someone they don't want to let get away. And in Jordan Bianchi's silly season notebook that came out last month, there were a lot of eyes on Chris Buescher as a potential free agent signing, but now Brad Keselowski, Jack Roush saying, no, we're keeping him. You're going to have to look somewhere else. So good news there for Chris Buescher and his fans. Meanwhile, hey, this is more Ford news, but NASCAR news as well. NASCAR and Ford have announced that there will be an exhibition race on Veterans Day. That's November 11th. It will be called the, quote, Proud to Honor Veterans Day Classic and will take place at a yet-to-be-determined location. Very little details about this event have been released so far, but as soon as we know more, we will be sure to bring it to you right here on the Racing Report. But hey, I'm always thrilled for a nice little exhibition race after the fact, after the season has ended. So again, the season is going to end that first week in November, and then we're going to have a nice little exhibition race. Details still TBA. I'll let you know as soon as we find out more. Finally, in the world of NASCAR, Kaz Grala is going to return to the Truck Series this weekend. He's going to drive for Halmar Friesen Racing in the number 62 truck at the Coronado Naval Base in San Diego. That is it for NASCAR news and Supercars news as well, and that's it for all the news that we've got to cover this week. We're going to go ahead here and take our second break of the show, but when we come back, of course, we're going to break down everything that happened over the past weekend of racing, and we're going to get you set up for all of the fun events that are happening this weekend across the world of motorsports. So all that's coming up after these messages. Don't go anywhere. You're watching The Racing Report. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks again so much for sticking with us through that break. As I teased before we went to the commercial, we're going to talk about everything that happened this past weekend. And like I said, no shortage of action. Almost everything was pretty much in action except for a few of the major series that we talk about. But overall, we had a lot of races to tide us over in that time. Of course, the first and foremost being the 24 Hours of Le Mans, another fantastic, thrilling event. And like I said last week, indeed, the entire race was broadcast start to finish, flag to flag, with hour-long pre- and post-race on True TV. How about that? Can't get any better than that. So you didn't even need to have a streaming subscription to get that. As long as you had basic cable, you could just pull up True TV and watch Le Mans. That's a huge deal, something that I don't think we've been able to say here in the United States about being able to watch Le Mans on basic cable in quite some time. So that's a huge deal in general. But overall, it was a very fun race. Of course, Toyota winning it all in the hypercar class, and overall, Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Nick DeVries standing on the top step. Of course, DeVries, this is a huge deal for him, for everybody who kind of writes him off based on how well his Formula One stint did or didn't go. At this point now, you can't help but respect him. He's a Formula 2 champion, a Formula E champion, and now he is an overall winner at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I mean, you can't go on there. I think we got to start putting some respect there on Nick DeVries' name in the same regard that we put on Kamui Kobayashi and Mike Conway, who are previous winners of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, but still a great event there. Hypercar was very competitive. I was very entertained. Of course, still gutted for Dorian Pon, but we move on into the LMP2 class. Inter-Europol competition were the victors there in that class. That was Tom Dillman, Nick Yaloli, and Jacob Schmichowski. I don't know. I should know, but I don't. In LMP2 Pro-Am, CrowdStrike Racing with Lauren Heinrich, George Kurtz, and Alex Quinn took home that class victory. And then in LMGT3, TF Sport were the victors. Nicky Katzberg, Johnny Edgar, and Ben Keating. Nicky Katzberg also. Dutch drivers winning. How about that? You had a Dutch driver win in Hypercar. You had a Dutch driver win in LMGT3. Better than their World Cup odds right now, I say as someone who is of Dutch descent. Moving on into Formula One. How about this? Lewis Hamilton getting it done for the first time in an F1 Grand Prix for Ferrari. Of course, he had technically won for Ferrari before last year, but it was a sprint race. We don't technically count it. This time Lewis Hamilton won a Formula One Grand Prix. He did so in Barcelona, and it was his 106th career Formula One Grand Prix, and that follows up that second place finish at Monaco just 2 weeks ago. So Lewis Hamilton honestly is looking pretty good and having some sort of career renaissance now with Ferrari, at least over the past 2 weeks, of course. It could change. We could see things change in Austria coming up here in a couple of weeks. But as of right now, how about Hamilton? You can't say enough about him still getting the job done, not showing any signs of slowing down, and going out there and taking advantage. And how about give a shout out to Ferrari actually getting the strategy call right, pitting Lewis Hamilton under a virtual safety car, allowing him to jump George Russell. I mean, honestly, finally, Ferrari makes the right move when it comes to strategy. I know that there's a lot of fans in red that were happy to see that race play out the way it did. But when we talk about other races that were this weekend, we also had a whole slate of races in Pocono in the world of NASCAR. Of course, the Truck Series not in Pocono this year. But we had the ARCA race on Friday. That was won by Gio Ruggiero. Got to give him props. He is tearing it up in ARCA this year. And then in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, Justin Allgaier scored the win. That's his 5th win of the season. And it is June, by the way. I want to mention it is mid-June. And Justin Allgaier, according to NASCAR, has already clinched a spot in the chase. That is how big his points advantage is so far. We still have several races left to go until the chase begins for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and we reset the points, but he is going to have the best shot at another title because he's going to have number 1 seeding and all these wins to go with it, likely carrying a lot of momentum going in to the rest of the season. Definitely looking forward to see how Justin Allgaier does coming up here later on this year. And then in the Cup Series race, it was Denny Hamlin again. That's his 3rd straight victory in a row, Nashville, Michigan. Now Pocono, not only did he break Kyle Busch's NASCAR Cup Series win record with 64 wins. Busch had 63. Hamlin tied that last week, I should say. It was a very emotional event, but now he's broken that record, climbed to 9th overall in career NASCAR Cup Series victories. He doesn't look like he's slowing down, and I think, and also, let's also talk about this too, he has closed the gap to the car that he owns, Tyler Reddick. He has closed what appeared to be an insurmountable gap down to 19 points. Hamlin is going to be one to watch throughout the next couple of months until the chase starts. I'm going to be curious to see when he overtakes Reddick, and how far ahead he's able to pull away before the chase reset. That's going to be the thing to watch in NASCAR coming up. But speaking of things coming up, let's take a look at all of the races that are on tap this weekend. Of course, we've got NASCAR for the first time ever at the Coronado Naval Base in San Diego. Looks like a cool circuit. Looks like a very fun track it's going to be. We've got all three series are in action. The Truck Series is going to start Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That race is going to be on FS1. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series is going to be Saturday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the CW, with the Cup Series racing Sunday at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Prime. That is Prime's last race of the year. Beginning next week, races will air on TNT until for the next 5 weeks. So be ready for that. Make sure to adjust your TV watching calendars. IndyCar is also in Road America, one of the best tracks in the country. Indy Next is going to have a pair of double headers. Race 1, I should say, is going to be Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on FS1, with Race 2 following it up the next day on Sunday at noon Eastern on FS1, with the actual IndyCar race taking place at 2 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox. Supercars are in Darwin at the Hidden Valley Raceway. Got Triple Crown, the Darwin Triple Crown, of course. Race 1 is Friday at 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Race 2 is Saturday at 1:50 a.m. Eastern Time. And then Race 3 is going to be Sunday at 1:10 a.m. Eastern Time. Of course, all of those are available to stream using SuperView on YouTube from the official Supercars YouTube account. Formula E is also back in action. It's been about a month since they were out, but they are coming back. It's going to be the first time in Sanya, which is around China. That's going to be since about 2019. COVID canceled the races there, and then it had been a while before the series was able to get back there. But now they're back finally this weekend. That race is going to take place Saturday at 3:05 a.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be an early one. Very early one. So if you're watching the Supercars race, that finishes up, you might be able to catch the Formula E race about an hour later after that starts. And that'll be, of course, on the Roku channel, streaming free. And then ARCA is going to be in Berlin Raceway. That'll be a good one. They're racing Saturday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on FS2. The Trans Am Series is also in action this weekend. They have a race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course, of course, in conjunction with the vintage racing events. The TA2 race is going to be Sunday at 10:10 a.m. Eastern Time, and the TA race is Sunday at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Both of those will stream on Racing America. You will need a subscription for those, just a heads up. But that is it for this week's episode of the Racing Report. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And coming up next week, we'll be back again to talk about everything that went on from this weekend in racing. So we hope you'll join us again next week. So again, reminder, if you like this show, feel free to follow me on social media. You can do so by looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. Make sure you have the WTHR streaming app installed on your smart TV, and also make sure you are subscribed to the WTHR YouTube channel so you'll get updates on every single Racing Report episode as soon as it is posted. So for WTHR, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been another episode of the Racing Report.